Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you had a good lunch. We're going to have a very exciting session ahead of us. You can look at the long list of paper presenters and discussants. So I wouldn't take a lot of time to provide introduction and preambles. I'll go straight to inviting the speakers to actually present their papers. We have 4 papers, and then we have 3 discussants. So first off, let me invite Aruhan. Aruhan is actually from AMRO to present her paper. Aruhan, please. You have 10 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. It's my pleasure today to present this joint work with Zhao Hongyan, sitting over there, on our research of population aging and economic growth, both globally and for the ASEAN+3 economies. Let's wait a second for the slide. There you go. I'm sure everyone sitting here today will find this no surprising that we are experiencing a global trend of chronological aging, and this is across all economies of all regions and income groups that we're observing. And given this demographic trend, there's a vast number of research on how this will impact our economy. It goes as early as 1950s by Paul Samuelson when he talked about overlapping generation models. However, interestingly, we don't seem to find any consensus at the moment regarding the relationship between aging and growth and the relationship between aging and different channels of growth. On top of that, most of this research, when they talk about aging, they define it as the population age above 65. However, we're looking at another trend globally, which is the increase in life expectancy. Therefore, solely looking at a constant threshold of 65 as definition of age may be misleading in our research. Therefore, the first thing we do in our research is to construct the prospective old age dependency ratio measure. More specifically, it is defined as population aged above a threshold divided by population age between 15 and a threshold. So conventionally, when we look at old age dependency, we define the threshold as age 65. However, in our work, in our exercise, we change this threshold by adapting it to the dynamic nature of life expectancy. So we look at ages above 90% of the life expectancy are considered being old, and we also consider some other percentages for robustness of the work. Now, when we actually plot the conventional old age dependency ratio with the prospective old age dependency ratio, we can see that they paint quite a different picture in terms of how aged we are, what stage of transition we're at in terms of this demographic shift. So first, if we look at this red line here plotted, which is the conventional old age dependency ratio using 65 as a threshold, we can see an increasing proportion of old age in globally on average. Whereas if we look at prospective old age dependency ratio, which let's first focus on the CN line here, we can see a reducing proportion of old age actually we're observing globally on average. Therefore, we use this POADR measure, the prospective old age dependency ratio, to run some simple regressions here. The first thing we look at is how aging impacts economic growth, controlling for other channels of growth. And the second thing we look at is how aging directly impacts these different channels of growth. And lastly, we also look at the contribution of growth by age groups around the retirement ages. So here is what we find. First of all, globally, we find that aging has adversely impacted economic activity, and we noticed that this negativity was more pronounced pre-1990. So here on this figure here, I'm plotting the regression coefficients for the POADR measure. And as you can see on the first block of bar charts, the red one here shows the negativity of the coefficient of POADR, which if we were to interpret it, we can say that a 1 percentage point increase in the old age dependency ratio of the economies corresponded to around just a little bit above 4 percentage point decrease of GDP per engaged population or per worker. And we also split the sample by time periods, and we can see from the darker shade of the cyan color on the right-hand side that pre-1990, this measure shows a much more significant negativity than post-1990. And one possible reason is this drastic technological progress we've been experiencing since the 1990s, which may have helped eliminate some of the negative impact of aging on growth. We also look at the impact of aging on different economic growth channels, and globally, for the whole sample, we find that the negative impact seems to be more pronounced through the human capital channel, human capital accumulation, and the TFP growth part. However, we want to highlight that for lower middle income and low income economies, which is the very far right 3 bar charts there, all 3 channels can show a very negative impact. When we look at the contribution of different age groups on growth, here we focus on those age groups right before retirement, age group of 55 to 59, and those right after retirement age for 66 to 70. In this case, we divide our sample, or we select our sample of economies to be those who have retirement age between 60 and 65. And what we find is that these age groups nearing retirement and beyond have increasingly contributed to growth, especially since 2000. And this is in regard of their, despite their GDP sector focus. For example, it could be both more industry-focused economies or service-focused economies. And next thing we did is to look at the economies in our ASEAN+3 region. Interestingly, different from the global result, we find insignificant relationship between the aging measure of POADR and the economic growth, as shown by these 3 bar charts plotting the regression coefficients. While there are variations for individual economies of the region. For example, we see Hong Kong and Japan showing a significantly negative result, which is in line with the global result. And the rest of the ASEAN economies showing insignificant result, whereas China and Singapore seems to show a positive result. Many factors could be at play here to explain this. Our conjecture is that it could be a combination of, first, where the region is at on this demographic transition. So if we compare the region's POADR measure, so how the proportion of old age, in a way, in this region, we see that the ASEAN, the red line here, we see that the ASEAN region on average is consistently lower than the global average in terms of this aging process. Although +3 has showing increasing trend, it has been lower than global average before 2019. And the second factor might be at play here would be where the economies are at in terms of their TFP development and their human capital accumulation progress. So here we plotted the red dotted economies, which are our economies in ASEAN+3, against the global economies. So we can see that the region has a relatively higher level of TFP growth rate and human capital growth rate, especially in comparing to lower income and low income economies. So based on this exercise, before I dive into the policy recommendations, the general takeaway I want to say is to actually change our perceptions of aging. The fact that, which is aligned with Professor Ronald Lee's quote in the Handbook of Economics of Population Aging. So we should not consider the age above 65 as burdensome or unproductive. In fact, we should embrace this as part of the inevitable process of chronological aging and change our perception of this aging process. And more specifically, the first policy recommendation we provide is to enhance human capital and technological advancements to leverage the economic benefits of aging. And number two is that we should ease retirement age restrictions and provide more job opportunities for those workers who want to remain in the labor force. And lastly, as we all know that this chronological aging is inevitable, we should embrace it by developing the silver economy, meaning all the economic activities that are serving those over the age of 50, and using this as a new source of growth and as a transition. Thank you very much. That's all from me today.
Thank you so much, Arohan, and thank you for keeping time as well. And also glad that I can tell people that I'm now below 30, right? So, anyway, please let me now invite Encik Sufrizo to present his paper. He is from the Center for Strategic and Policy Studies in Brunei. Thank you, Sufrizo. You have 10 minutes. Sure.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Sufrizo, and I'm from the Center for Strategic and Policy Studies, Brunei Darussalam. So in this paper, we are examining the impact of aging, specifically the changes in the population age structure on labor productivity in Brunei Darussalam. So to start off, this is the executive summary. So what we did in this paper is that we examined empirically the long-run relationship between population age structure and labor productivity in Brunei. So what we have found is that, contrary to the literature, we have found that elderly has a positive impact on labor productivity, while the middle age or the prime adults have a negative impact. With that results, we have recommended several policy recommendations, specifically for the government to implement on specific age groups within the workforce. So moving on. So to start off, we understand that the world is currently aging and the amount of people aged 60 years and above is increasing. And for the first time, the UN has projected that at least the number of 65 years old will be twice the amount of 5 years old and below. And in the context of Asia, this is 1 out of 4 people will be 60 years old. So this is the diagram which shows the Asian population age structure for the year 2000 and 2022. So we can see that here for the 0 to 19 years of age, there is a decreasing trend for all ASEAN countries. And for the middle age, across all countries, ASEAN countries, there is an increasing trend, except for Singapore and Thailand. While looking at the 60 years and above, all countries are experiencing an increase, and the most significant increase we can see is by Singapore from 7.2 to 16.6%. So moving on, this is the percentage of population aged 65 years and above. We can see that here above, for the year 2021, all countries are still relatively not relatively a low age society. But if we look at the projections made by the UN, by 2050, almost all ASEAN countries will either double or quadruple the amount of percentage of population aged 65 years and above. And this one shows the old age dependency ratio. So why Brunei seems to be an interesting case study? Because if you look at this particular diagram, We started off by 8.1%, but it will be projected to quadruple to 32.8% here. This relatively increase in the old age dependency is very high within a given short period of time. And comparing this with the other ASEAN countries, Brunei is currently the fastest aging nation here. So like I have mentioned in the diagram, and it will at least increase by 6-fold. So this is what makes the study to be interesting. So this is the crude death rate and the total fertility rate. Both are showing a decreasing trend, where studies have shown that if these two trend is decreasing, it will result in population shrinkage, and aging population will definitely increase. And we can see that the total fertility rate here will be below the population replacement, which is the 2.1, as suggested by a few studies. So moving on, here we are comparing Brunei and the ASEAN countries. So if we look at the chart here, by 2050, Brunei will become a super age society. By at least 21% of the population will be above 65 years of age. So this is just a short snip on the population pyramid in 2021, and this is the projected population pyramid. So we can see that it will shrink at the bottom, and in the middle part it will be increasing. So this shows the labor productivity in ASEAN countries, where Brunei is the only ASEAN countries experiencing a decline. So this is a matter of concern, because aging will affect productivity through several mechanisms, such as cognitive decline, physical decline, experiences, health issues, and so on. So if we look at the literature, we have two sides, which is the micro level and the macro level here. But if we look at the consensus, what we have read from the literature, it shows that aging and productivity, there is an inverted U-shaped relationship. Meaning to say, as you age, your productivity will go up, but to a certain point. However, after that certain point, threshold, it will lower down. So what we did in this study, we compiled 30 years of data from 1991 to 2021 for Brunei, from different various of sources, and also from official sources from Brunei. So this is the econometric model that we have proposed, where productivity is a function of labor and capital. In this case, we measure labor with different age group to capture the effect over time. We define young age labor between 15 to 29, while the prime age labor between 30 to 49, and the old age, or the elderly in this case, between 50 to 59. So this is just the summary statistics, just to show how the data is. And this is our VECAM estimation results, which is the short run results. So what we have found in the short run is that there is a negative relationship between the young age and the productivity, while the middle age, there is a positive and significant relationship, and the old age, there is a negative relationship. But if we look at the long run relationship here, we have found that contrary to the literature, our results shows that there is a negative long-run relationship between prime age adults and productivity, while there is a positive long-run relationship between elderly and productivity. This is quite surprising, at least for myself, but we have came up with a few justifications or perhaps reasonings on why this is the case. So firstly, we have to understand that Brunei is an oil exporting country. However, if we look at the amount of people employed in the country, at least 20% of the population employed in the non-productive industry, which is the government. However, as much as this is the case, oil and gas contributes to at least 45% of Brunei's GDP. And secondly, there is an increase in labor force participation rate, particularly for the age 65 years and above. We hypothesize that this is due to the fact that Brunei has increased its retirement age from 55 to 60. So moving on, this is the employed population, like I've mentioned. The public administration at least has a 22% of employed population by the type of economic activity. However, if we look at the mining and quarrying, which contributes to at least 45% of Brunei's GDP, it's only around 5%. So this could be the reasons why our results is like that. So again, like I've said earlier, at the age of 65 years and above, there is an increase in labor force participation rate. This could be due to the fact that Brunei has increased its minimum retirement age from 55 to 60 years old. So to conclude, what our paper did was that despite Brunei having probably the second highest GDP per capita in the ASEAN region with the comprehensive welfare, we faces lots of socio-economic issues such as low GDP growth rate, high unemployment rates, and also fiscal deficit. And these issues could be further exacerbated by an aging population. With that in mind, our studies have shown that these demographic shifts would affect labor productivity in Brunei, where the old age workers showing higher productivity compared to the middle age. And we will finish this paper by suggesting a few policy recommendations. Firstly, we would like to suggest that there is a need to increase retirement age in order to ensure that we could fully utilize the old age to get more productivity from them, firstly. Secondly, as much as increasing retirement age, we need to ensure that these elderly people would be able to contribute back to the economy. Therefore, there is a need to implement active aging strategies to ensure that they are healthy and able to contribute back to the economy. And lastly, our study shows that there is a negative relationship between the middle age to the productivity. So this is, like I have said earlier, this is contrary to what the literature have been saying. So there is a need to study further why this is the case for Brunei. And with that, I thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Sufrizo. Very fascinating paper. For our third presentation, it will be by Ms. June Park from the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. So June, stage is yours.
I lobbied for 15 minutes. So please bear with me if I do a little bit of a run over. My name is June Park, and I'm a political economist by training, and I currently work for the Middle East Council on Global Affairs, which used to be the Brookings Doha Center. And when Brookings closed all the regional centers, this institute became independent and is now funded by the Qatari government. I am mostly in charge of technological innovations and R&D related, Asia GCC related research currently. And this paper that I was inspired by from the AMRO call for papers is related to some of my research on digital currencies going forward. So it has a specific component on South Korea, and I hope that we would be able to make a more fruitful discussion after discussing my country's case. So here from the left side, you see the digital transformation impacting the senior elderly. Then in the middle, there are some pictures that display what's going on in the South Korean situation. Senior kiosks, education for seniors, then senior branches opening up by commercial banks, and the ATM machines, automated teller machines that are still in need, but closing, and seniors having to download apps and rely completely on themselves if their grandsons or granddaughters don't teach them how to use them. Then there's CBDCs. So overview-wise, very simple. Digital finance and aging. Then we'll look very briefly at the ASEAN+3 and South Korea aspect. Then we'll delve into the case study of South Korea, and we'll look into some of the policy steps taken by the South Korean financial authorities as well as the commercial banks. Then my policy recommendations. So, if you look at this graphic, essentially what's happening is that there is no policy space, favorable policy space for seniors in the South Korean. There was no favorable policy space for the seniors in the Korean financial system. Especially this was revealed during the pandemic when banks started to close at a very rapid rate. And one of the complaints that came from the senior population was that there are no targeted products, financial products, just for the elderly, while there are plenty for the young. And the favored interest rates for some of the deposit programs, products that are offered by commercial banks were also very different. You see that from the ages of 20 to 39, 77.4, and for 60 and over, 19.4. So these are some very, very widening gap of issues. The bank closures are accelerating, but people over 65 plus, they're on the rise very rapidly. Then fertility rate issues also. This is the aging population, and by 2072, roughly about 50% of South Korea's population would be, half would be the elderly. And this is a very dystopian kind of a scenario. But overall in the region, we also see similar trends in various countries within the ASEAN+3. Then fertility rates-wise, Korea's case is very often discussed by foreign media, especially the New York Times, on why this happens and how women's situations are deteriorating and they do not, they choose the option not to get married. All of these issues are closely related to the population issues regarding the elderly. We could go forever on this topic, so let's leave it for discussion. Now I'd like to shift a little bit more towards the 5G environment. I work mainly on the digital economy, and currently one of my topics going forward is on connectivity. So 5G, 6G, seamless connectivity is required for a full-fledged digital transition. But if you see all over the world, Singapore fares quite well, but it's not the same across the board. Even within ASEAN+3, it's very different. So if you see here, smartphone usage rate varies quite widely amongst countries, and internet access rate also. So we could see that this infrastructure difference can also be one of the stalemates toward trying to coordinate something together. Internet speed and mobile internet speed, they also vary significantly, and you could see that +3 countries are a lot more better. But at the same time, you see that even amongst China, Japan, Korea, there is some variability. And this is one of the issues going forward in terms of AI transformation. So let's look into South Korea for a second. Network coverage-wise, Korea's telecom is very much concentrated in the major centers, major metropolis centers. But if you look at the ranges of what they offer in terms of these three companies, SK has the most broad coverage. 5G has not been completely, available for all, and still there is this ongoing discussion within South Korea about how much consumers have to contribute in order to get real 5G. And smartphone plans for seniors by the three major telecom companies that I mentioned, actually they're quite affordable. In Korea, if you are 65 years plus, you still can have a reasonably affordable option, a plan for your 5G usage or anything that has internet access with a smartphone plan. However, if you look at the actual, this is coming from the BOK survey results, proportion of population with experience of usage by payment methods, you could see that for the age range of 60s and 70s, cash is the preferred method. And this will not change in our lifetime, at least for the next 20 years. Credit cards are mainly preferred by 30s, 40s, 50s, and debit cards mainly by the 20s. Monetary and fiscal policy governance structure-wise, this is a segue into some of the policy developments that happened by the Bank of Korea, the FSC, and the FSS in Korea. Here, what's essential is that the central bank, the Bank of Korea, conducted a series of surveys, nationwide, random sampling, but still very, very meaningful in terms of collecting data. And then there were some guidelines given by the FSC and the FSS. Okay. So these two, the latest one is not yet published, but the 2019 and 2021 report, sorry, there's a typo there, they were stratified sampling by province, age range, gender, a random sampling of, at first it was less than 3,000 adults, and then more than 3,000 adults in the second report. So after this report came out, it was very easy to identify what crucial questions we had to answer. And then the FSC and FSS got together to design something for the elderly in terms of internet apps, banking apps on smartphones. One of the complaints, major complaints coming from the seniors was that the app itself was very unreadable and very difficult to use. So simplification of the apps and user-friendly sort of modes that were created, it became a mandate for commercial banks to abide by. For instance, so general banking versus easy banking, with a shift, you would turn on with your finger, an easily approachable mode for the elderly, and you would have a more simplified kind of an interface. And the transfer screen would be one of the most frequently used by the seniors. There are also digital training centers opened up by commercial banks like Shinhan Bank, and senior lounges run by Gungmin Bank. Continuing on to South Korea on the path to CBDCs, which is one of my central parts of research going forward, I would just like to note that Korea has conducted 2 stages of internal sort of developments in terms of internal pilot. And Korea, the Bank of Korea will go on a nationwide pilot test, excluding the metropolitan area of Seoul, from Q3 of this year. So far, what has been happening is that there have been developments regarding developing a DLT-based network amongst the participants. So the first stage was with a company called GroundX, which was a child company of Kakao. The second stage was mainly on offline transaction operations, and currently the Bank of Korea is cooperating with Samsung to develop a CBDC, offline CBDC platform. And by this evolution, you could see that there have been an increase of participants and regions in terms of this pilot. And right now, focusing on embedding the offline CBDC environment into Galaxy smartphones. Then there are some interoperability test efforts going on by the Bank of Korea. Bank of Korea is currently an observer in Project Enbridge. And last year, they joined Project Mandala, and this year, Project Agora also. So this is an ongoing effort to sort of gauge where CBDCs can go in terms of where Korea wants to see how its CBDC should be built. Currently, the Bank of Korea is focused on wholesale CBDCs only. So the takeaway here is that first, you need a national survey for each country to see where the problems lie in terms of or identify the trends of transaction in terms of the jurisdiction itself, because every jurisdiction has a different mode of financial transactions. Conducting these within the ASEAN+3 region, jurisdiction by jurisdiction would be it would be advisable. And secondly, the improvement of the digital payment methods for the elderly would be something that's needed depending on what kind of financial payment trend each jurisdiction has. Then third, the digital financial inclusion of the elderly in CBDC pilots. This is something, an open question going forward even for South Korea. But if adoption is the ultimate goal or a considered goal, this must be considered in order for this to, the development of digital finance to go forward. So I'm ending with just one change.org petition here. This is a case in Spain where a senior petitioned with his complaints about banking in Spain during the pandemic, and he feels left out because he is not really treated well, or he cannot adjust to the disappearance of banks. And I think that by conducting the national surveys first, we would see what kind of problems lie in this region and then go forward from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, June. Lastly, may I invite Ms. Yao, Yisin Yao from the ADBI for a presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yixin Yao. I'm from Asia Development Bank Institute. I'm a senior research fellow there. Originally, I'm from Ministry of Finance, China. I was a chief negotiator there for PRC ADB, PRC World Bank, and PRC many financial institutional organizations project for more than 20 years. And then I worked for the ADB headquarters for 3 years. So my presentation based on my experiences, and also I would like to talk about a case study from China. Look at this, yeah. The topic is smart elderly care platforms in China, practice challenges and policy implications. So I will talk about some the background, history, and then I will focus on practice in China, and then have some policy implications. So just as many colleagues already mentioned, the aging problem is right now is severe in China, and I will not repeat what they already highlight. I just let you know, yeah. Do you have any ideas about what is the definition of aging society? So according to the definition actually from UN in 1956. So when a country, the people who is the aged more than 65, the population is more than 7% of the total population. This country or region is classified as an aging society. Please pay attention to this year, 1956. So around 70 years before. So is this definition still reasonable today? Think about that. And then according to this definition, and also another definition I mentioned in my paper, but not shown here at the PPT, when a population or country, the people who is over 60 years old, the population of 60 years old plus people, if more than 10% of the population, this country and region will be regarded as an aging society. So this definition comes from 1982. Think about that, around 45 years ago. So is this definition also reasonable? Think about that. So according to, even though I'm, maybe we could have new definition, but right now, based on this definition, I'm talking about the aging China, and regarding the, according to the statistics of China's fifth census in 2000, think about 24 years ago, China, the population, aged more than 60 is already 16% of the China's total population. So that means 24 years ago, China is already an aging society, according to the definition from UN. I didn't, move, sorry. Look at this, yeah. And then many colleagues already show some beautiful pictures more than this, but look at this, we can find that from 2001 to 2023, the population of China's population aged 60 and above increasing from 16% to 21%. And those aged 55 and above rose from 7% around to 15%. So by 2050, it is projected that around 40% of the population will be aged 60 and above, and 30% will be aged 65 and above. So indicating that a severe aging problem existed there. So we can find, along with the aging problem, we have a very severe declining birth rate. I will not repeat the data here, just look at this picture. And for interest of time, I will skip some slides, but I will share this PPT to all of you so you can read it later. And this traits, the aging plus the declining of birth rate, indicate growing demand for high-quality elderly care system as the burden of family care increased and the need for new elderly care model becomes more urgent. So they already have many scholars has done some research on this, so I may not need to repeat them. Okay, let's look at that. There is a term in China, 危中有机，机中有危. Challenges in Chinese, we can also have another name like a risk plus opportunity. 机遇与挑战并存. So the risk and the opportunities exist there together. I believe many colleagues already mentioned that. So from the risks, we can find some opportunities. And when we look at the opportunities, there are still many risks exist there. So how can we deal with this? Fortunately, we are living in the era of digitalization. So that's why digitalization could provide some useful, efficient solutions to the elderly care. From this angle, I dropped my paper, and also I focus on what happened in China currently. What is a smart elderly care platform in China? So I would like to give you an example. We can look at, right now, there are more than 31 provinces in China actively developing smart elderly care platform. Though the name may be different, but the smart elderly care platform is there. So if you visit some provinces, maybe you can visit some smart elderly care platform societies, companies. So this platform integrates the technologies like IoT, cloud computing, mobile internet, and intelligent calling and GPS positioning. And the goal is to provide the professional and intelligent elderly care service at home, covering institutional, home-based, and community daycare. And they aim to monitor the elderly's physical condition, safety, and daily activities, meeting their needs in life, health, and entertainment. In China, the Ministry of Civil Affairs is the main responsible organizations under the central government and also the local government. At the same time, other ministries like Ministry of Finance and the NDRC in China, National Committee of Development and Information, at central level and local level. Many ministries have the responsibilities to help the ministries of civil affairs to deal with this aging problem. Recently, the central government issued policies to support the smart elderly care, such as the Smart Elderly Care and Health Industry Development Action Plan, a lot of. I list all these policies in my paper. So if you are interested in it, you can search it. Now, I would like to highlight a case study from China. It comes from a province, namely Shanxi province. And the city is Taiyuan, which is the capital of Shanxi province. It is a major industry hub, known as particular for coal and steel production. So I hope some of them already visit Shanxi and the capital Taiyuan. And this city, Taiyuan, has a significant elderly problem, mirroring China's broader aging demographic traits. So this smart elderly care platform in Taiyuan covers the number of people aged more than 60 and above, and reached around 550,000 in 2020, and they account for around 16% of the city's total population. And the platform used the data from the Taiyuan Civil Affairs Bureau to accurately identify service recipients by categorizing them into different groups, such as empty-nest elderly, elderly living alone, etc. Then the practice of this smart elderly care platform in Taiyuan, actually the platform covered all the scenarios of smart elderly care through the sub-platform for family elderly care bed management, home care services, call services, and community cartons supervisions, and also the platform provides full cloud supervision, offering 24 hours monitoring for the elderly safety, real-time distress monitoring, and one-stop service for community cantons. So there are a lot of services they provide. I will not elaborate all of them. Just look at this. To save time, let's skip some slides. Then the achievements of the smart elderly care platform in Taiyuan centralized more than 500 community home-based elderly care services providers, and serving over more than 12,000 elderly people annually with various assistant services. So there are some already they achieved, so you can look at this. Then let's focus on the challenges faced by this smart elderly care platform in Taiyuan. First, the insignificant platform promotion. So only about 7% of the elderly population in Taiyuan has registered on this platform. Why? The reason is different. So, and then we look at some of them. The elder people, then some of them not familiar with these smartphones find it difficult to access services, like proficiency in digital technology, and some privacy concerns there, like this. And also, they're facing the shortage of technical personnel. The platform requires specialized technical talent, including AI engineers and data governance professionals. And currently, the investment in building and training technical teams is insufficient, and also leading to a lack of sustainable technical support. And also continuous platform construction necessitates more advanced technology expanding. Meaning, so I just focus on such of these. And at my paper, they are already elaborated in detail. So now let's focus on some risk of financial sustainability. So the balancing investment costs and benefit in the initial, let's focus on some of them. Look at these. For example, the initial investment in technology, talent, and funds have not yet formed a sustainable and profitable model. And then the elderly population has limited consumption capacity, so leading to a long capital recovery period and high risks. So still they have some inconsistent smart elderly care standards. How can we do next? So I just list some of them. We still need to think it about deeper, but now I would like to highlight some of them. For example, next step, we need to enhance the platform utilizations. So by 2025, this platform aims to deepen the coverage of smart terminals plus digital platforms and increase daily usage rates among elderly residents. And also would like to increase the market share and also enhancing the capital integration for platform operations and so on. So still have a lot of room to be improved.
Then, in the interest of time, I would like to ask you to.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So last sentence, I want to share with you that everyone has parents, grandparents, even though now in this classroom, most of us are under 60, and almost all of us are under 65. But let's think about this aging problem. But if you are still young, please not so proud, because today is the youngest day in your life. If you are old enough, please don't feel upset. Today is also the youngest day in your life. Cherish it. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Now we are done with the paper presentation. I would like to invite Anne first to be discussing the papers. Right.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anne Oeking. I'm from the IMF. Thank you for having me here today and giving me the opportunity to comment on those papers. First of all, let me thank all the presenters for those interesting papers and presentations. I learned a lot about specific countries and issues while reading the papers. Just a little heads up, though, I only had 3 out of the 4 papers available earlier, so Aruhan, it looks like a very interesting paper, and I will read it some other time. Unfortunately, I cannot focus on it today. So very briefly, to give an overview of what we just heard in this session, the papers highlight the interconnectedness between demographic trends, economic policies, technological advancements, all in shaping the future of the aging societies here in the ASEAN+3 economies. And yeah, in the interest of time, let me skip the details, but provide some context. I think we have seen a version of this chart multiple times today. This is maybe a little bit more in terms of the global perspective. So again, going back to the UN definitions of aging, aged, and super-aged societies, this puts the ASEAN+3 economies in context in terms of all the other global economies. So it's showing the share of the population over 65 as of last year. And as you can see, several of the ASEAN+3 economies ranked among the most aged as of last year And also when we look at the projections 10 years ahead, it shows that many others of the regional economies will follow suit and will continue to rapidly age. Again, something we have heard many times today. So since time, I have about 5 minutes, is too limited to discuss all papers, and since I am a macroeconomist by training, I would like to briefly focus on the paper on Brunei Darussalam, on population age structure change and labor productivity. It's an important topic and question. As you can see here on the last slide, Brunei is by far not yet among the oldest societies in the region, but it has been aging or will be aging very rapidly. And the paper also showed that it has one of the lowest labor productivity growth rates in the region, so why not study the intersection of the two? At the IMF, we have also done much work on aging, of course, and on its macroeconomic impact in particular. So let me briefly show you two charts from a previous RIO, Regional Economic Outlook. This is a few years back, but I think the topic, it's still very relevant, of course. So this RIO from April 2017, I think it shaped the succinct summary, which was picked up many times by the media. I also heard it a few times today, saying that Asia will grow old before becoming rich. Here in the first chart, so similar to the study for Brunei, we showed that aging has implications for productivity growth, including because different age groups differ in terms of their productivity. This could be due to factors such as accumulation of experience over time, or depreciation of knowledge, or age-related trends in physical and mental capabilities. And several studies find a decline in worker productivity and innovation starting at around 50 to 60 years old. But as we are arguing here, the impact of aging may also differ across professions. The productivity of workers in physically demanding professions, think for example about factory workers or somebody working in construction, declines at an older age, while productivity may increase with age in other professions such as lawyers, managers, doctors, maybe economists. And this is what we're summarizing in this chart. So what's the share of the workforce whose productivity will rise or fall with age? And as the chart shows, this differs quite a bit across countries, maybe most noticeably at the very bottom, so countries with lower per capita income levels, here we're showing Thailand and Vietnam, tend to have a larger share of their workforce in professions where productivity tends to decline with age. So all in all, this underscores the importance of structural transformation to prepare for an aging workforce. And the second chart I wanted to show you is we also estimated the effect of workforce aging, and workforce aging here measured by the share of workers between 55 and 65 years old in the total workforce, so the effect of that on productivity. And the findings show that an increase in the share of older workers is associated with a significant reduction in labor productivity growth across a sample of economies. And when we decompose this into factor accumulation and TFP, we find that most of the slowdown is indeed through weaker TFP growth. So broadly speaking, an older workforce is estimated to lower annual TFP growth by around 0.2 percentage points on average for Asia. And this is what you see here in red. And then in green, to put this into perspective, when we look at the estimated impact of projected workforce aging for several Asian economies, this impact is significant, the red bars, but likely of second-order magnitude compared to the growth impact of changes in the size of the labor force, what we're showing here in green. So with that, let me offer a few questions and suggestions for your specific paper. The paper seems to focus on labor force participation rates within age groups. So some of the questions would be, how do these rates change amid an aging society? Why do you think looking at labor force participation rates is the best approach here? How do these labor force participation rates capture aging and capture population age structure? How would your results change with other variables capturing age structure? For example, if you look at the share of older workers in the workforce. Now, finally, I wanted to take a broader perspective again by focusing on all papers, or let's say all 3 papers that I read in the session, and conclude with some questions that might guide the discussion further. But I do think I'm out of time, so I don't want to go into detail and read all of these. You know, I'm happy to share those bilateral. Maybe to pick out one in terms of the digital financial inclusion paper, which I thought was very interesting. I thought, you know, maybe you could discuss a little bit more the benefits versus the cost. I thought that was an interesting part of the paper, both the monetary and the non-monetary costs. But again, I think I am out of time, so let me stop here. Once again, thank you to our presenters and for those interesting papers, and I'm hoping we can have further engaging discussions on these topics. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Annie. So now let me invite Professor Dien from the Foreign Trade University in Vietnam for his comments on the papers.
Good afternoon. I apologize that I don't have any slide, even though I read the same 3 out of 4 paper. But hearing the 4 presentation, I think it's all very interesting. The first comment I want to share here is that from this morning until now, we see that the aging population is a kind of a common problem, a common phenomenon for all the countries in the region, that each and every country have to face with, have to respond to it. It's the same in the region. However, the contribution, the relationship between the aging population, the challenge are linked with the opportunity for the country. The first 2 papers mentioned about the economic growth and the productivities. And I think that from the 2 presentations, they share the same, and it's similar to other previous research as well, that the relation of the aging population to the economic development are not always. I depend on a lot of the characteristics, a lot of the factors. This morning we mentioned about the urban, the difference between the urban and the rural area. We mentioned about the formal and the informal sector within the country. And the second paper today, the second paper in this afternoon, I think is a very interesting because it comes from the empirical research from the Brunei. It's the only country in the region when we see the decrease of the productivity. And the author, very interesting that you mentioned about the industry. Might be the economic structure are one of the factors that will change, that will affect, moderate the relationship between the aging population to the productivities. And I agree with you that we might need some other research in different countries to see whether the industry, the economic structure can have some impact on the relationship between the aging population and the economic growth. However, the comment here is coming back with the topic in this session is digitalization. We all know that the digitalization will somehow affect the economic structure of the country. So if we put the digitalization, it will affect the economic structure. So whether we can see in the future that aging population will influence positively or negatively to the productivity and the economic growth. For example, when the country like Vietnam, the current economic structure, we have the big proportion on the labor-intensive industry. However, with the digitalization, the economic structure of the country might change. We are not focusing on the labor-intensive industry anymore, but we change to other one. So whether in the future, it will affect the relation between the aging population and the economic. So when we combine the digitalization, aging population, and how they can affect the growth, economic growth. The second comment is on again starting from the participation of the older into the economic activities. The last two papers is very interesting because they show that in order to exploit the benefit of the aging population, we need somehow to involve them into the economic sector by expanding the retirement age or somehow like that. But the paper, the last two papers mentioned about, the first one talking about the caring, the smart elderly care. So if we want to invite the older into the working population, we need to take care of them. And the second, the last paper talking about somehow is on the capacity, on the support for the old people to join the working force by providing some of the digital skill. I think both paper contribute some example, some experience, so that we can see how the government can take care of the old people and how the government can support the old people to have some updated skill and updated capacity to join, to contribute to the economy. So it's very interesting, and I think that each country here, we can learn a lot from them. However, the comment for discussion, the question for discussion is if you want to take care or you want to support the capacity building, the recommendation from both the third and the fourth paper, you are always requiring about the financial limitation. So we have to spend. The government need to invest some money on that, to spend on that. However, the spending of the government spending on the older people need to be balanced with how much they can contribute to the growth and the productivity of the country. And in this aspect, maybe the digitalization will help the spending of the government more effectively. For example, the smart elderly care might be more effective than normal and traditional elderly care. So in this situation, we can exploit the digitalization, we can exploit the smart platform to be more effective in supporting the aging population to join the working force. So, and again, it contributes to the economic growth of each country and in the region. And it is some of my discussion on the four paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Tien. Finally, we have Executive Director Kim of the Center for International Development from KDI. Mr. Kim, you have the last 5 minutes.
Thank you, Alan. This is just after the lunch, and I can see some angers from your eyes, so I'm going to be really quick. So most of the discussions focus on the supply side. That means financial institutions or public institutions focusing on the digital divide or productivity issues, policy measures to against the digitalizations or aging population issues. So I try to flip over those issues. So approach that issue from the recipient or beneficiary of the policies, which is general citizens. So the digital divide is apparent in Korean society as well as other countries over the globe, where digital divide is some issues in societal or economic sense as well. And there is some important factors in determining the size or scope of the digital divide, including age or gender, even education, income, or location of the citizens as well. So we need to identify which is the most important factor in determining this digital divide before setting up some policy goals or implementing those important policy measures. So there is some three levels of digital divide from the previous researches. So first one is digital access. That means you can purchase the smartphones, for example, and then make them affordable to the seniors. So when N suggests those ones, the policy against the seniors of the digital divide, then the first level digital divide is apparently adequate. But the second level is usage. That means you read something and change messages, even creating some documents and upload it and make a complaints when you feel uncomfortable when online like that. And the third one is productive issues. That means generating contents and increase your productivity in workforce. And those ones are 3 layers of the digital divide. And for my research with the Dr. Wu in KDI, I actually focus on the digital capital, which consists of 2 components, digital assets and digital competence. So digital assets is equipment and connectivity, like high-speed internet or smartphones, 5Gs, those ones. And the other one is skills. That means how to utilize and maximize those benefits for using the digital technologies online. So that is basically based upon the survey, the annual survey for the digital utilization in Korean society. So there are some categories of the surveys, and those surveys are collected and summarized in papers. And the survey includes the seniors and farmers and disabled, low-income guys, even refugees from North Korea and married immigrants. And surprisingly, for the digital assets, which is connectivity or equipment, there is not apparent digital divide as expected. Rather, digital competence shows great digital divide, especially for the aging populations. So I'm turning 50 this year, so I'm going to lose my competence in next year, according to that Pentagon. But the other areas, like gender is not so important, but however, income or education has some great impact on the digital divide, especially in digital competence. Then how can we incorporate those lessons into the policies? So we need analyze with more researches or discussions like this one, so that we can identify and clarify the problems in your hands. In Korean society, we did some researches based upon the survey data, but I do not see some clear evidence in other countries, especially developing countries in ASEAN regions. So I propose more researches sponsored by AMRO or other prominent institute. And the other one is most of the personal and positional characteristics are correlated with the digital capital of senior citizens. That means combining the factors with the age and location or income has more impact in digital divide. So the more focused or detailed approach to narrow the digital divide is needed and must do for the governments all over the globe, I believe. Especially for the AI, as Anne suggested, has greater impact than other developing technologies. So we need to see whether it's time to stop the development of AI or share some ideas or benefits from the AI to the not just the seniors, rather to the juniors or even infants utilizing AI technologies or not. So that is on our table. So we need some clear answer or solutions in harmonized way. Of course, open discussions like this one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kim. Now it's 3:16, so we started at 2:02. We have less than a minute left. So unfortunately, we don't have time for questions from the floor. But during coffee break, dinner, and maybe even the trip tomorrow on the way to the destination, you can ask the questions to our paper presenters as well as our discussant. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to address them. So with this, let me thank the speakers as well as the discussant for a very insightful session. Thank you so much.